His life was destroyed. His reputation was in tatters, and his future felt like it had vanished overnight. All of it gone because of a single, devastating accusation. He insisted he was innocent, but in the court of public opinion, the verdict was already in. He was guilty. But as his world crumbled around him, a secret was hiding in plain sight. A secret that wouldn't just clear his name, but expose a truth so bizarre no one could have possibly seen it coming. Because what nobody knew was that 11 hidden cameras had been watching, and they had recorded everything. A man we'll call Mark was, by all accounts, a pretty ordinary guy. In his late 40s, he'd lived in the same quiet neighborhood for over a decade. He was a senior accountant, the kind of dependable colleague who always remembered birthdays, and the kind of neighbor who'd wheel your trash cans in if you forgot. His life was predictable, structured, and peaceful. And that peace was shattered on a Tuesday afternoon. It all started with a poisonous but cleverly vague post on the neighborhood Facebook group. The post came from his next-door neighbor, a man we'll call Gregory. It didn't mention Mark by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. Gregory wrote about feeling unsafe in his own home, about being watched and harassed by a neighbor just a few feet away. He hinted at unsettling behavior that gave him a growing sense of dread. Within hours, the post absolutely exploded. The digital mob formed with terrifying speed. People Mark had shared a friendly wave with for years were now openly speculating in the comments. Was it him? What did he do? The vagueness of the accusation somehow made it worse, letting people's imaginations run wild. By the next morning, someone had sent a screenshot to Mark's boss. Before Mark even had a chance to defend himself, he was placed on indefinite administrative leave. The life Mark had so carefully built was imploding. Friendly greetings from neighbors were replaced with suspicious glares or people suddenly finding something interesting on their phones. Friends became distant, not sure what to think. Mark was suddenly an outcast, trapped in a nightmare orchestrated by the man on the other side of the fence. The accusation had taken on a life of its own, and Mark was completely powerless to stop it. Totally bewildered, Mark did the only thing he could think of. He went to the police. He walked into the local precinct, his hands trembling as he clutched a printout of the Facebook post. He tried to explain to the officer that this was all a vicious lie, a smear campaign that was costing him everything. He laid out his history with Gregory. They weren't friends, but they'd always been civil. Mark admitted they'd had one minor disagreement months ago about a tree branch hanging over the property line, but it was resolved quickly. There was absolutely nothing that could explain this sudden public character assassination. The police listened, but Mark could practically see the skepticism in their eyes. In their experience, neighbor disputes were almost always a messy he said situation. They took his statement, filed a report, and basically told him to avoid Gregory and think about getting a lawyer. It felt like a complete dismissal. His life was being dismantled by a feeling, an insinuation. How do you prove you haven't been secretly watching someone? How do you defend yourself against an accusation with no evidence? His world was shrinking, and the walls were closing in fast. A week went by. Mark was still suspended from work, and the whispers around the neighborhood were only getting louder. Feeling they had to follow up on Gregory's formal complaint, 2 detectives were assigned to the case. They started with the accuser. At his home, Gregory passionately repeated his story. He claimed Mark would stare at his house for hours. He said he heard strange noises at night. He insisted he was being stalked. As the detectives listened, they paid close attention to Gregory's demeanor. He seemed less scared and more agitated, his eyes darting around his own perfectly clean home. He was adamant that the police needed to search Mark's house, convinced they'd find telescopes or listening devices. The detectives left the interview with a nagging feeling. Gregory's story was intense, but it was all subjective. It lacked any concrete, verifiable details. Something just felt off. Standard procedure meant investigating the accused, but good police work also means making sure the accuser is credible. With Mark's reputation ruined, how could he possibly prove what was really going on? The answer, it turned out, was about to pivot the entire investigation in a direction that no one could have ever predicted. Before we get to what the police discovered next, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. The twist in this story is a powerful reminder that the truth can be buried in the last place you'd ever think to look, and you won't want to miss it. The detectives decided to do a thorough sweep of the area. They spoke with other neighbors and walked the perimeter between Mark's and Gregory's homes, but found nothing to back up Gregory's claims. No worn-down paths, no broken fences, nothing. But as one detective stood on the sidewalk looking back at Gregory's house, he noticed something. Tucked into a decorative birdhouse near the porch was a tiny, dark circle that glinted in the sun. That wasn't part of any birdhouse he'd ever seen. It looked like a lens. Suddenly, the detective's gut feeling from earlier kicked into high gear. They took a closer look around the property and found another strange device, a USB wall charger plugged into an outdoor outlet, aimed not at the house, but out toward the street. It was completely out of place. This wasn't a simple harassment case anymore. This was potential illegal surveillance. Armed with this new evidence, the detectives quickly got a search warrant, not for Mark's house, but for the home of his accuser, Gregory. What they found inside was a paranoid fantasy brought to life. The scene was unbelievable. They found a camera disguised as a digital clock in the living room, pointing out the front window. They found another hidden inside a smoke detector. In the kitchen, a Bluetooth speaker had a camera embedded in it. They found them in air fresheners and even in coat hooks. Some were aimed outside, capturing the whole neighborhood. But far more disturbingly, some were pointed inside, at his own doors and living spaces. One by one, they tagged each device. The final count was staggering. 11 hidden cameras. This wasn't home security. This was a web of obsession. The discovery of the cameras was the turning point. The footage on them was the final nail in the coffin. A digital forensics unit was brought in to analyze the terabytes of data, and the truth they uncovered was more twisted than anyone could have imagined. The outdoor cameras confirmed that Gregory was obsessively monitoring the entire neighborhood. He had hours of footage of people walking their dogs, kids playing, and mail carriers just doing their jobs. The cameras aimed at Mark's property revealed the shocking truth. Gregory was the one trying to cause trouble. The footage showed him yelling at Mark from his yard and then quickly ducking back inside, almost as if he were trying to stage a confrontation. But the most damning evidence came from a deeper look into Gregory's past. The nature of the surveillance prompted a diligent background check, which uncovered a disturbing pattern. It turned out that Gregory had faced a formal complaint in another state for invasive recording after he was caught planting a camera in a former workplace. He had moved away to get a fresh start, but he brought his dark hobby with him. Gregory hadn't just accused Mark of a crime. He'd accused him of the very crime he himself was secretly committing. It was a textbook case of psychological projection, creating a scapegoat to deflect any suspicion from himself. With this mountain of evidence, the entire case was turned on its head. The complaint against Mark was immediately dropped, and he was publicly cleared of all accusations. His employer, facing a PR nightmare and a potential lawsuit, issued a formal apology and reinstated him with back pay. Gregory, meanwhile, was arrested. He faced a battery of serious charges, including multiple counts of invasive visual recording and stalking. Given the overwhelming digital evidence, he ultimately accepted a plea deal. Because of the scale of his operation and his past history, he was sentenced to prison. These types of offenses can often carry severe, life-altering penalties, including the possibility of having to register as a sex offender. For Mark, the nightmare was finally over. His life had been torn apart by a lie, But in a bizarre twist, it was saved by the very technology he'd been accused of misusing. The ordeal left him shaken, a stark reminder of how fragile a reputation can be. He learned a hard lesson, that sometimes the deepest darkness isn't in some far-off place, but hiding right behind a neighbor's friendly wave. This story is a shocking look at just how far deception and obsession can go. A man's life was systematically dismantled by a public accusation, only for the accuser to be exposed as the true perpetrator, caught in a high-tech web of his own making. The 11 hidden cameras, meant to fuel a secret obsession, ended up doing something else entirely. They told the truth. They cleared an innocent man and exposed the guilty one, who was hiding in plain sight. If you were stunned by the twist in this case, hit that like button and share this video. For more incredible stories where the truth is stranger than fiction, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Let us know in the comments, what do you think of this unbelievable turn of events?